Triple Alliance. How Aztecs built an empire. The vision of three speakers. In the pre-dawn hours of a cold morning in 1428, three men stood on a small island in the northern reaches of Lake Texcoco, their silhouettes barely visible against the backdrop of distant mountains, where the first hints of sunlight painted the sky in shades of bronze and gold. These were not ordinary mortals, but visionaries whose decisions would reshape the political landscape of Mesoamerica and establish the foundation for the mightiest empire the Americas had ever known. Itzcoatl, the newly elected Huey Telatani of Tenochtitlan, raised his obsidian blade toward the eastern horizon where the sun god Huitzilopochtli would soon emerge from his nightly battle against the forces of darkness. At 50 years of age, this seasoned warrior king possessed the military experience and political acumen that had earned him the respect of Mexico society during the darkest period in their history. Unlike his predecessors who had risen to power during times of relative stability, Itzcoatl faced existential threats that demanded bold action and innovative solution. To his right stood Nezahualcóyotl, the exiled prince of Texcoco, whose father had been murdered by agents of the tyrannical empire of Azcapotzalco. This brilliant young man, barely 28 years old, carried within his mind the accumulated wisdom of generations of Texcoco rulers who had governed the eastern shores of the Great Lake with a combination of military might and administrative sophistication that was legendary throughout central Mexico. His eyes burned with the cold fire of calculated vengeance, but behind that passion lay the strategic intelligence that would prove instrumental in transforming three desperate allies into an unstoppable imperial confederation. The third figure, Totoquihuatzili of Tlacopan, represented the pragmatic element that would make their ambitious alliance sustainable across decades of expansion and conquest. This ruler of the western city-state possessed detailed knowledge of Tepanec defensive preparations, having served as one of Maxtla's subordinate commanders before secretly defecting to the rebel cause. His presence symbolized the possibility that even the enemy's most trusted allies could be turned against them through careful diplomacy and strategic incentive. As the three leaders prepared to formalize their confederation through ancient rituals that would bind their dynasties together in perpetual alliance, they understood that they were participating in something far greater than a mere military pact. This was the birth of a new form of political organization that would combine the military efficiency of Mexico warriors, the administrative expertise of Texcoco bureaucrats, and the commercial networks of Tlacopan merchants into a single imperial system capable of dominating all of Mesoamerica. The ceremony that followed ancient Mesoamerican traditions of confederation required each ruler to contribute drops of his own blood to a sacred fire, while priests chanted invocations requesting divine approval for their unprecedented alliance. The smoke that rose from this ritual offering carried their collective prayers to the realm of the gods, seeking supernatural sanction for political innovations that would challenge every established power structure in the known world. The terms of their alliance reflected careful negotiations that acknowledged both the relative contributions and capabilities of each partner, while establishing principles of cooperation that could endure through changing circumstances. Tenochtitlan, as the initiator of the rebellion and the largest contributor of military forces, would serve as the senior partner with supreme command during joint campaigns and the largest share of tribute from conquered territory. Texcoco, in recognition of Nezahualcóyotl's political legitimacy and administrative expertise, would govern the eastern regions and manage the confederation's legal and bureaucratic affairs. Tlacopan, though smallest of the three partners, would control western territories and receive a guaranteed portion of tribute revenue. This division of responsibilities created a governmental system that maximized each member's strengths while minimizing potential conflicts over jurisdiction and authority. The Mexica provided the military muscle necessary for conquest and territorial expansion, while the Texcocans contributed the administrative sophistication required for efficient governance of diverse populations. The Tlacopan contributed commercial expertise and established trade networks that would prove essential for converting military victories into sustained economic prosperity. As the sun fully emerged above the eastern mountains and cast its golden light across the waters of Lake Texcoco, the three rulers concluded their ceremonies with oaths of mutual support that established the foundation for what would become known to history as the Triple Alliance. This confederation would endure for nearly a century, transforming three regional powers into the masters of an empire that stretched from sea to sea and commanded the tribute of millions of subjects. Yet even as they celebrated this diplomatic triumph, the three allies understood that their real work was just beginning. The Tepanec Empire of Azcapotzalco remained the dominant military power in the Valley of Mexico, commanding resources and manpower that dwarfed their combined capability. The tyrant Maxtla still occupied his fortified capital and commanded the loyalty of numerous client states that had benefited from Tepanec hegemony. The war that would determine the future of central Mexico was about to begin, and the outcome remained far from certain. The Tepanec tyranny, the empire that the Triple Alliance sought to overthrow, represented everything that the Allied leaders despised about authoritarian rule and the abuse of imperial power. Under the iron fist of Maxtla, son of the great conqueror Tezozomok, the Tepanec Empire had transformed from a legitimate confederation of city-states into a predatory system that existed primarily to extract wealth from subject peoples, while denying them any meaningful participation in governance. Azcapotzalco, the capital of this oppressive regime, sprawled across the western shores of Lake Texcoco like a cancer that consumed everything around it while producing nothing of lasting value. The city's massive pyramids and elaborate palaces had been built with tribute extracted from dozens of conquered communities, their grandeur serving as monuments to Tepanec arrogance rather than genuine cultural achievement. The streets teemed with merchants who grew wealthy by monopolizing trade routes and bureaucrats who enforced tax collection with ruthless efficiency, while the surrounding countryside was stripped bare to feed the capital's insatiable appetite for luxury and display. Maxtla himself embodied the worst characteristics of tyrannical rulership, combining cruel paranoia with strategic incompetence in ways that made effective governance impossible while maximizing suffering for his subjects. Unlike his father Tezozomok, who had at least possessed the military genius necessary to build an empire, Maxtla ruled through fear and arbitrary violence that created enemies faster than his armies could suppress them. His court was filled with sycophants and informers who competed to demonstrate their loyalty through increasingly elaborate displays of servility, while competent administrators and honest advisors were systematically eliminated as potential threats to his absolute authority. The tribute system that sustained Tepanec power had evolved into a form of organized robbery that impoverished subject peoples, while enriching a narrow circle of collaborators in the imperial capital. Unlike legitimate tribute arrangements that provided benefits to subordinate communities in exchange for their contributions, Maxtla's system offered nothing but protection from his own predation. Cities that failed to meet their tribute obligations faced devastating military punishment that often left them unable to contribute anything for years afterward, creating cycles of violence and economic devastation that benefited no one. The economic inefficiency of this extractive system created vulnerabilities that intelligent opponents could exploit through superior organization and strategic plan. Resources that should have been invested in productive activities were instead consumed by an ever-expanding bureaucracy of tribute collectors and enforcers whose primary function was to maintain their own privileged position. Military expenditures focused on suppressing domestic opposition rather than defending against external threats, leaving the empire vulnerable to coordinated attacks by enemies who understood its internal weakness. The social tensions generated by Tepanec's rule created opportunities for revolutionary organizing that went far beyond simple military opposition. Many of the empire's nominal subjects had never fully accepted foreign domination and remained loyal to their traditional rulers who had been displaced or murdered during the conquest period. These latent loyalties could be activated through careful diplomacy and promises of restored autonomy under a more benevolent imperial system. The assassination of Nezahualcoyotl's father had been particularly counterproductive from a strategic standpoint, as it eliminated one of the few regional leaders who might have been willing to accommodate Tepanec hegemony in exchange for guaranteed autonomy over Texcoco territory. Instead of securing eastern approaches to the Valley of Mexico, this brutal act created a determined enemy who possessed both the knowledge necessary to exploit Tepanec weaknesses and the legitimacy required to rally opposition throughout the region. The intelligence networks that Nezahualcoyotl had developed during his years in exile provided the Triple Alliance with detailed information about Tepanec military capabilities, defensive preparations, and internal political divisions that could be exploited during the coming conflict. These spy networks had been carefully cultivated through personal relationships,
built over years of clandestine contact with dissatisfied nobles and disgruntled administrators who had grown weary of Maxtla's arbitrary rule. The religious dimension of Tepanek tyranny had alienated powerful priestly factions who objected to the regime's interference with traditional ceremonial practices and its appropriation of religious authority for political purpose. Maxtla's attempts to centralize spiritual authority under his personal control had violated ancient traditions that granted local communities autonomy over their relationships with patron deities, creating religious opposition that complemented political and economic grievance. The military organization of the Tepanek Empire reflected the regime's focus on internal oppression rather than external defense, with much of its armed forces consisting of garrison troops whose primary function was intimidating civilian populations rather than fighting foreign enemies. These forces were experienced at suppressing unarmed rebellions but lacked the tactical flexibility and combat motivation necessary for success against disciplined armies led by competent command. The diplomatic isolation that resulted from Maxtla's aggressive policies had eliminated potential allies who might have supported the Tepanek Empire against the Triple Alliance. Regional powers that had once viewed Texcoco as a valuable counterweight to other threats now saw the empire as a greater danger to regional stability than any external enemy. This diplomatic failure meant that the Tepaneks would face the coming war without significant external support at precisely the moment when their enemies had assembled the largest anti-imperial coalition in Mesoamerican history. The art of alliance, the transformation of three desperate conspirators into a unified military and political force, required diplomatic skills and organizational innovations that went far beyond simple agreements to cooperate against a common enemy. The Triple Alliance represented a new form of confederate governance that preserved the autonomy and dignity of member states while creating integrated systems of military command, economic management, and territorial administration that could function effectively across vast distances and diverse populations. The military integration that made joint campaigns possible required unprecedented coordination between armed forces that had been organized according to different traditions and trained according to different tactical doctrines. The Mexica contributed the largest infantry contingents, drawn from their expanding population of Mesoamerican, who had been trained in traditional warrior societies that emphasized collective action and individual courage in equal measure. These soldiers were organized into units based on their Calpulli affiliations and equipped with obsidian clubs, spears, and shields, decorated with distinctive designs that identified their origins while maintaining unit cohesion during complex battlefield maneuvers. Texcoco's military contribution focused on elite warrior units and specialized siege equipment that reflected Nezahualcoyotl's intensive study of military innovations from throughout Mesoamerica during his years in exile. The exiled prince had observed the tactics employed by various regional powers and developed new concepts that enhanced conventional warfare through superior engineering and strategic planning. His forces included specialized units trained in siege warfare, naval operations, and mountain combat that provided capabilities unavailable to traditional city-state armies.
Tlacopan's forces brought commercial and logistical expertise that proved essential for sustaining extended military campaigns in territories where local populations might be hostile or unwilling to provide supplies. Their knowledge of trade routes, storage techniques, and transportation systems enabled the alliance to maintain armies in the field for months rather than the weeks that characterized most Mesoamerican conflicts. This logistical superiority would prove decisive in campaigns against enemies who expected brief conflicts followed by negotiated settlements. The economic coordination that funded alliance operations required sophisticated systems of resource pooling and cost sharing that respected the sovereignty of member states while ensuring equitable distribution of both burdens and benefits. The tribute formula that allocated 2/5 of conquered wealth to both Tenochtitlan and Texcoco while reserving 1/5 for Tlacopan reflected careful calculations that balanced military contributions against political legitimacy and administrative capabilities. The establishment of joint administrative institutions created governance mechanisms that could manage territories too large and diverse for any single city-state to control effectively. These hybrid bureaucracies combined Mexican military efficiency with Texcoco legal expertise and Tlacopan commercial knowledge, to produce administrative systems that were more sophisticated than anything previously seen in Mesoamerica. The integration of different governmental traditions created opportunities for institutional innovation that enhanced the effectiveness of imperial administration while preserving local autonomy where possible. The diplomatic protocols that governed alliance decision-making established procedures for consultation and consensus building that prevented internal conflicts while ensuring rapid responses to external challenges. The Council of Three Speakers created forums for discussing policy options and coordinating responses to changing circumstances without surrendering the independence that each member state considered essential to its identity and sovereignty. The intelligence sharing arrangements that provided strategic information to all alliance members created comprehensive understanding of regional political developments that no single state could have achieved independently. The combination of Mexican military intelligence, Texcoco administrative knowledge, and Tlacopan commercial networks produced information systems that covered all of central Mexico and extended into regions that had never been penetrated by any previous intelligence operation. The cultural exchange programs that facilitated cooperation between different ethnic groups and linguistic communities created social bonds that strengthened political alliances while preserving cultural diversity. Intermarriage between ruling families, educational exchanges between priestly schools, and joint religious ceremonies created personal relationships that transcended political calculations while reinforcing alliance solidarity during periods of stress and challenge. The military academy established at Tenochtitlan brought together the best young warriors from all three alliance members for advanced training that created professional military units with shared tactical doctrines and personal loyalties to the Confederation rather than individual city-states. These elite forces served as the nucleus for larger armies, while providing a cadre of officers who could coordinate complex operations involving troops from multiple political entities. The technological cooperation that shared military innovations throughout the alliance created standardization of weapons, fortifications, and battlefield communications that enhanced combat effectiveness while reducing logistical complications. The adoption of common equipment standards meant that ammunition, replacement parts, and repair services could be provided by any alliance member regardless of which specific forces were engaged in particular operation. The succession planning that ensured continuity of alliance leadership across generations created institutional stability that survived the deaths of founding members while adapting to changing political circumstances. The careful cultivation of personal relationships between heirs apparent from different alliance members meant that cooperation could continue even when new leaders possessed different personalities and priorities from their predecessors. The War of Liberation, the military campaign that destroyed Teponec power and established the Triple Alliance as the dominant force in central Mexico, demonstrated the strategic advantages that could be achieved through superior organization, innovative tactics, and effective coordination between alliance members. This was not merely a war of conquest, but a liberation struggle that freed dozens of city-states from tyrannical rule while establishing principles of confederate governance that would influence Mesoamerican politics for generations. The initial phases of the conflict required careful preparation that coordinated military mobilization with diplomatic initiatives designed to undermine Teponec legitimacy throughout the region. The alliance leaders understood that victory depended not just on battlefield success, but on convincing subject peoples that resistance to Maxtla served their own interests rather than simply replacing one form of foreign domination with another. This political dimension of the conflict required sophisticated propaganda campaigns that portrayed the alliance as liberators rather than conquerors. The siege of Azcapotzalco represented the culmination of months of careful planning that integrated conventional military operations with psychological warfare designed to break the enemy's will to resist. The alliance forces surrounded the Teponec capital with earthworks and siege engines that demonstrated their intention to maintain pressure indefinitely while offering generous terms to defenders who surrendered before the city's fall. This combination of military pressure and diplomatic incentives gradually eroded Teponec morale while preserving alliance resources for subsequent campaigns. The naval operations that controlled Lake Texcoco demonstrated the alliance's mastery of combined arms tactics that integrated land
land and water-based forces in ways that had never been attempted in Mesoamerican warfare. The construction of specialized war canoes and amphibious assault craft enabled Alliance forces to attack Teponec positions from unexpected directions while maintaining secure supply lines that could not be interdicted by enemy ground force. The psychological impact of early Alliance victories created momentum that attracted additional support from previously neutral city-states, while demoralizing Teponec allies who began to question their loyalty to a losing cause. The careful treatment of prisoners and the generous terms offered to communities that switched sides demonstrated Alliance intentions to govern through cooperation rather than coercion, creating incentives for peaceful surrender that reduced the costs of territorial expansion. The battlefield innovations that gave Alliance forces tactical advantages over their enemies reflected the creative application of traditional Mesoamerican military techniques, enhanced by organizational improvements and technological refinement. The coordination between different types of combat units, infantry, archers, siege specialists, and naval forces, created combined operations capabilities that overwhelmed enemies accustomed to simpler forms of warfare. The intelligence operations that provided advance warning of enemy movements and accurate assessment of Teponec military capabilities enabled Alliance commanders to concentrate forces at decisive points while avoiding costly frontal assaults against prepared defensive positions. The spy networks that had been developed during the pre-war period proved their value by providing real-time information about enemy plans and internal political developments that could be exploited for strategic advantage. The logistical systems that sustained Alliance forces during extended campaigns demonstrated the practical benefits of confederation between states with complementary economic specialization. The ability to maintain armies in the field for months rather than weeks gave the Alliance decisive advantages over enemies who expected brief conflicts, followed by negotiated settlements based on existing power relationships. The diplomatic initiatives that prevented foreign intervention in the conflict ensured that the war remained a regional affair rather than expanding into a general Mesoamerican conflict that might have threatened Alliance survival. The careful cultivation of neutral states and the provision of guarantees regarding their territorial integrity created international conditions that favored Alliance success, while isolating the Teponec Empire from potential sources of external support. The siege warfare techniques that enabled Alliance forces to capture fortified positions without prohibitive casualties reflected the sophisticated military engineering capabilities that Nezahualcóyotl had developed through his study of defensive systems throughout central Mexico. These technical innovations provided practical solutions to tactical problems that had traditionally made siege operations extremely costly for attacking forces. The urban warfare tactics that proved effective during the final assault on Azcapotzalco demonstrated Alliance adaptability to combat environments that differed significantly from the open field engagements that characterized most Mesoamerican conflicts. The ability to fight effectively in built-up areas required specialized training and equipment that reflected the professional military standards that distinguished Alliance forces from traditional city-state militia. The post-victory administration of conquered territories established precedents for imperial governance that balanced efficiency with legitimacy through careful attention to local customs and existing power structure. The restoration of traditional rulers who agreed to accept Alliance suzerainty created stability while demonstrating that cooperation would be rewarded with autonomy and respect rather than punishment and humiliation. Imperial governance required administrative innovations that went far beyond traditional city-state management systems to encompass the complexities of governing diverse populations across vast territories with different languages, customs, and economic systems. The Triple Alliance created governmental institutions that combined efficiency with flexibility in ways that enabled effective control while preserving local autonomy and cultural identity. The tribute collection system that funded imperial operations represented a fundamental improvement over the predatory extraction mechanisms employed by previous regional powers. Instead of simply demanding payments without providing corresponding benefits, the Alliance offered security, commercial opportunities, and conflict resolution services that created genuine value for tributary communities. This positive-sum approach to imperial economics generated greater revenues while reducing resistance and administrative costs. The legal framework that governed relationships between the imperial center and tributary states created predictable rules and procedures that replaced arbitrary decision-making with institutionalized processes that protected the rights of subordinate communities while ensuring compliance with imperial requirements. The development of appellate courts, standardized legal procedures, and trained judicial personnel created justice systems that enhanced imperial legitimacy while providing effective mechanisms for resolving disputes. The administrative personnel system that staffed imperial bureaucracies combined meritocratic selection with appropriate ethnic representation to ensure both competence and political reliability among officials responsible for governing distant provinces. The establishment of training programs for provincial administrators created professional cadres with standardized skills while providing career advancement opportunities for talented individuals from throughout the empire.
The communication networks that enabled coordination between the imperial center and distant provinces represented significant improvements over previous information systems through the development of standardized record-keeping procedures, trained messenger service, and efficient transportation routes. The ability to transmit orders and receive reports across hundreds of miles within reasonable time frames made possible centralized decision-making while maintaining local administrative autonomy. The economic integration that created empire-wide trade networks generated prosperity for both the imperial center and tributary communities through the removal of barriers to commercial exchange and the standardization of weights, measures, and currency systems. The establishment of regular market cycles and secure trade routes created opportunities for specialization and economic development that benefited all participants in the imperial system. The military garrison system that maintained security throughout imperial territories balanced the need for effective defense against potential rebellions with sensitivity to local concerns about foreign military presence. The rotation of garrison units prevented the development of local loyalties that might compromise their reliability while providing opportunities for cultural exchange that strengthened imperial cohesion. The religious accommodation policies that preserved local spiritual traditions while introducing imperial ceremonies created synthesis between existing belief systems and imperial ideology that enhanced legitimacy while maintaining cultural diversity. The construction of temples dedicated to both local deities and imperial gods created symbolic representations of political relationships, while providing venues for ceremonies that reinforced social bonds across ethnic and linguistic boundaries. The educational systems that transmitted imperial culture while preserving local knowledge traditions created informed populations capable of participating effectively in imperial governance while maintaining their distinctive identities. The establishment of schools that taught both local and imperial languages, customs, and technical skills created human resources necessary for efficient administration, while demonstrating imperial commitment to cultural preservation. The technological diffusion programs that spread agricultural and craft innovations throughout the empire enhanced productivity while creating economic ties that strengthened political relationships. The transmission of chinampas, agriculture, improved metallurgy, and advanced construction techniques created shared prosperity while demonstrating the practical benefits of imperial membership. The demographic management policies that regulated population movements while facilitating voluntary migration created labor force flexibility while maintaining community stability. The establishment of procedures for voluntary resettlement and temporary labor migration provided solutions to regional economic imbalances while respecting individual and community autonomy. The environmental management systems that coordinated resource use across multiple ecological zones created sustainable extraction practices while maximizing economic productivity. The regulation of hunting, fishing, and forest exploitation prevented overuse while ensuring adequate supplies for both local consumption and imperial tribute obligations. The urban planning initiatives that created new cities and improved existing ones demonstrated imperial capacity to enhance quality of life while providing visible symbols of imperial achievement. The construction of public buildings, improved water supplies, and enhanced transportation infrastructure created tangible benefits for imperial subjects, while establishing architectural styles that reinforced imperial identity. The mechanics of domination. The expansion of Triple Alliance control beyond the Valley of Mexico required sophisticated strategies for incorporating diverse populations with varying levels of political development, economic specialization, and cultural sophistication into a coherent imperial system. This process of imperial integration combined military pressure with diplomatic incentives, economic opportunities, with administrative oversight, in ways that created sustainable relationships between the imperial center and peripheral territory. The target selection process that determined which territories would be incorporated into the empire reflected careful analysis of strategic value, economic potential, and defensive necessity that maximized benefits while minimizing costs and risk. The alliance leadership understood that indiscriminate conquest would create administrative burdens and military commitments that exceeded their organizational capabilities, so expansion proceeded according to rational planning rather than opportunistic aggression. The military campaigns that brought new territories under imperial control demonstrated increasing sophistication in siege warfare, mountain combat, and operations in tropical environments that reflected the professional development of alliance armed force. Each successful campaign provided experience and expertise that enhanced capabilities for subsequent operations, while building reputation that often made military action unnecessary as potential targets chose submission over resist. The negotiation procedures that determined terms of incorporation created standardized frameworks for tributary relationships, while allowing sufficient flexibility to accommodate local conditions and preference. The development of formal treaties that specified mutual obligations and rights created predictable relationships that enhanced stability, while providing legal foundations for resolving disputes that might otherwise lead to renewed conflict. The integration ceremonies that formalized new tributary relationships created psychological and spiritual bonds that complemented political agreements through rituals that honored both imperial authority and local tradition. The careful attention to ceremonial requirements demonstrated imperial respect for local customs, while establishing clear, hierarchical relationships that prevented misunderstandings about political status and obligation. The economic assessment procedures that determined appropriate tribute levels balanced imperial revenue requirements against local economic capacities in ways that generated maximum sustainable income without impoverishing tributary population. The sophisticated understanding of regional economic specializations enabled the empire to demand tribute in forms that created minimal disruption, while providing goods that were valuable for trade or internal consumption. The garrison deployment strategies that maintained imperial security while minimizing local resentment created military presence sufficient to deter rebellion without creating the appearance of occupation or oppression. The careful selection of garrison personnel and the establishment of clear rules governing their behavior prevented the incidents that might otherwise have generated resistance, while demonstrating imperial capacity to maintain order and security. The administrative oversight systems that monitored compliance with tributary obligations created early warning mechanisms for potential problems, while providing frameworks for addressing grievances before they developed into serious political challenge. The regular reporting requirements and inspection procedures ensured that local administrators understood imperial expectations, while providing opportunities for feedback and adjustment when circumstances change. The commercial integration policies that incorporated local economies into empire-wide trade networks created opportunities for prosperity, while establishing economic relationships that made rebellion costly and disrupt. The removal of barriers to trade and the establishment of secure transportation routes generated wealth that benefited both imperial and local interests, while creating constituencies that supported continued imperial membership. The cultural preservation initiatives that protected local languages, customs, and religious practices, while introducing imperial ceremonies, created synthesis between local and imperial traditions that enhanced legitimacy, while maintaining diversity. The support for local festivals and the construction of temples
dedicated to regional deities, demonstrated imperial respect for cultural autonomy, while providing venues for ceremonies that reinforced political relations. The educational opportunities that provided training in imperial languages and administrative procedures, while preserving local knowledge traditions, created human resources necessary for effective governance, while demonstrating imperial commitment to local development. The establishment of schools and the provision of scholarships for talented students created pathways for social advancement, while building cadres of local administrators. The marriage diplomacy programs that created kinship relationships between imperial and local elites generated personal bonds that complemented political agreements, while providing mechanisms for peaceful conflict resolution. The careful negotiation of marriage alliances created networks of family relationships that transcended political boundaries, while establishing frameworks for cooperation across generations. The technological transfer initiatives that introduced new agricultural techniques, craft methods, and construction technologies enhanced local productivity, while demonstrating practical benefits of imperial membership. The diffusion of chanampas, agriculture, improved metallurgy, and advanced engineering created shared prosperity, while establishing technological dependencies that made independence less attractive and feasible.
The imperial zenith. By the reign of Moctezuma Iluekamina in the Triple Alliance had evolved into a sophisticated imperial system that controlled territory stretching from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean, commanding the tribute of millions of subjects, while maintaining internal stability through a combination of military deterrent, economic incentives, and administrative efficiency that represented the pinnacle of pre-Columbian political achievement in the Americas. The territorial extent of imperial control encompassed ecological zones from tropical lowlands to alpine highland, creating economic opportunities for specialization and exchange that generated unprecedented wealth, while providing security for trade and transportation that enabled commercial development on scales never before achieved in Mesoamerican history. The empire's geographic diversity created natural redundancy that provided insurance against regional disasters, while enabling optimal resource allocation according to local advantages and capabilities. The population under imperial administration numbered in the millions, representing dozens of ethnic groups, linguistic communities, and cultural traditions that were integrated into imperial systems, while preserving their distinctive identities and local autonomy. This demographic diversity created both challenges and opportunities for imperial governance that required sophisticated administrative solutions and flexible policy implementation that balanced efficiency with legitimate. The tribute revenues that flowed into Tenochtitlan from throughout the empire funded massive construction projects, maintained professional armies, and supported specialist craftsmen who produced luxury goods that demonstrated imperial wealth and cultural sophistication to both domestic and foreign audiences. The careful management of these resources created economic stability, while providing employment opportunities and infrastructure development that enhanced quality of life throughout the imperial territory. The military organization that protected imperial territories and deterred potential challengers had evolved into a professional force capable of rapid deployment across vast distances, while maintaining specialized capabilities for different types of combat operations. The integration of warriors from throughout the empire created military units that combined diverse tactical traditions, while maintaining unified command structures and standardized equipment. The administrative sophistication that enabled effective governance of territories too large and diverse for any previous Mesoamerican state demonstrated institutional innovations that balanced centralized planning with local autonomy in ways that maximized efficiency while preserving political stability. The development of standardized procedures, trained personnel, and reliable communication systems created governmental capabilities that rivaled those of contemporary European or Asian. The commercial networks that facilitated trade throughout imperial territories created prosperity for both imperial and local merchants, while providing goods and services that enhanced quality of life for populations at all social levels. The standardization of weights,
measures and trade procedures, reduced transaction costs, while creating opportunities for specialization and economic development that generated wealth for both producers and consumers. The cultural achievements that flourished under imperial patronage included architectural monuments, artistic productions, and intellectual developments that represented the culmination of centuries of Mesoamerican civilization. The synthesis of traditions from throughout the empire created cultural innovations that demonstrated both imperial greatness and the benefits of political unity. For artistic and intellectual development, the diplomatic relationships that connected the empire to independent states throughout Mesoamerica created networks of alliance and trade that extended imperial influence beyond the boundaries of direct political control, while providing security against potential threats. The careful cultivation of friendly relationships with unconquered neighbors created buffers against hostile powers, while providing opportunities for peaceful expansion through voluntary association. The religious synthesis that integrated spiritual traditions from throughout the empire created theological frameworks that reinforced imperial legitimacy while preserving local religious autonomy and cultural diversity. The construction of temples dedicated to both imperial and local deities created symbolic representations of political relationships, while providing venues for ceremonies that strengthened social bonds across ethnic and linguistic boundaries. The educational systems that transmitted both imperial culture and specialized knowledge throughout the empire created informed populations capable of participating effectively in imperial governance, while maintaining technological and intellectual capabilities necessary for continued development. The establishment of schools and training programs created human resources that enabled efficient administration while preserving and advancing the accumulated wisdom of multiple cultural traditions.
The technological innovations that emerged from imperial patronage and cross-cultural exchange included engineering achievements, agricultural improvements, and craft developments that enhanced productivity, while demonstrating the practical benefits of imperial unity. For technological advancement, the diffusion of innovations throughout imperial territories created shared prosperity, while establishing technological standards that facilitated trade and communication. Yet even at the height of imperial power and prosperity, structural vulnerabilities were developing within the imperial system that would eventually contribute to its dramatic collapse when confronted by unprecedented challenges that exceeded the adaptive capacity of even the most sophisticated indigenous American political institutions. The seeds of vulnerability, the very success of the Triple Alliance in creating the largest and most sophisticated empire in pre-Columbian America, contained within it the structural contradictions and systemic vulnerabilities that would ultimately contribute to its rapid collapse when confronted by the unprecedented challenges posed by Spanish conquest and the diseases they brought from the Old World. The tribute system that had provided the economic foundation for imperial expansion created deep resentment among subject populations who provided wealth and labor while receiving minimal benefits in return, generating latent opposition that could be activated by any external force capable of offering credible alternatives to continued imperial subjugation. The very efficiency of tribute collection ensured that grievances accumulated throughout the empire, while the success of imperial military forces prevented their expression through conventional rebellion. The administrative centralization that enabled effective governance of vast territories also created critical vulnerabilities to disruption of communication and command systems that could paralyze imperial responses to unexpected challenges. The concentration of decision-making authority in Tenochtitlan meant that regional administrators lacked the autonomy necessary to respond effectively to rapidly developing situations that required immediate action without waiting for instructions from the imperial capital. The military organization that had proved supremely effective against traditional Mesoamerican enemies was specifically adapted to forms of warfare that emphasized capture over killing, creating tactical doctrines that would prove disastrously inappropriate when confronted by European forces whose primary objective was the destruction rather than subordination of enemy forces. The religious and cultural values that shaped Aztec military practices became strategic liabilities when confronting opponents who did not share those values. The religious worldview that interpreted unprecedented events within existing theological frameworks prevented accurate assessment of external threats that did not conform to traditional categories of divine intervention or cosmic disturbance. The sophisticated astronomical and ritual knowledge that had enabled effective governance during normal circumstances became sources of confusion and paralysis when confronted by phenomena that exceeded the explanatory capacity of indigenous knowledge systems. The political legitimacy that depended upon continuous success in warfare and tribute collection created expectations that could not be maintained when confronted by military defeats and economic disruption that exceeded the empire's capacity to compensate through traditional means. The theological foundations of imperial authority became sources of political vulnerability when divine favor appeared to have shifted to foreign enemies, whose victories suggested superior supernatural support. The demographic concentration that had created the military manpower necessary for imperial expansion also created ideal conditions for epidemic diseases that could spread rapidly throughout population centers, while causing mortality rates that exceeded the empire's capacity to maintain essential services and military capability. The very urbanization that represented imperial achievement became a factor in imperial destruction when confronted by biological challenges for which indigenous populations had no immunity. The technological limitations that had not prevented imperial success within traditional Mesoamerican contexts became critical disadvantages when confronting enemies with superior metallurgy, fire, and transportation systems that provided decisive tactical advantages in direct military confrontation. The organizational innovations that had enabled imperial expansion could not compensate for technological gaps that affected fundamental military capability. The economic specialization that had created imperial prosperity through trade and tribute collection also created dependencies on complex supply networks that could be disrupted by military action or political upheaval, making the empire vulnerable to strategic attacks on infrastructure and commercial systems that had not been designed to function during periods of intensive warfare. The cultural achievements that demonstrated imperial greatness also required continued investment of resources and attention that became impossible to maintain during periods of existential crisis, creating psychological impacts that undermined morale and confidence among populations that had become accustomed to imperial success and prosperity. The diplomatic isolation that resulted from imperial expansion had eliminated potential allies who might have provided assistance during periods of crisis, while creating numerous enemies who were prepared to support any external force capable of challenging imperial power. The very success of imperial expansion created strategic situations that made imperial survival dependent upon continued military superiority that could not be maintained indefinitely. The eternal legacy, despite the dramatic military defeat that ended Aztec political independence, the administrative innovations, cultural achievements, and institutional developments created by the Triple Alliance continued to influence Mexican political culture and social organization long after the Spanish conquest, demonstrating the enduring power of indigenous governmental traditions and their capacity to adapt to changing circumstances while preserving essential characteristics. The governmental structures developed by the Alliance provided organizational models that influenced Spanish colonial administration and continued to shape Mexican political institutions throughout the colonial period and into the modern era. The principles of confederate governance, local autonomy within imperial unity, and administrative efficiency that characterized the Triple Alliance remained relevant to political challenges that transcended specific historical circumstance. The economic systems that integrated diverse regions into coherent commercial networks created patterns of trade and exchange that survived political upheavals, while providing foundations for colonial and post-colonial economic development. The understanding of regional specialization, market integration, and resource allocation that enabled imperial prosperity remained applicable to economic challenges that required coordination across large territories,
with diverse population. Expansion influenced resistance movements throughout the colonial period and provided organizational models for independence struggles and revolutionary movements that sought to overthrow foreign domination through coordinated action by indigenous and mestizo populations who maintained cultural connections to pre-Columbian military heritage. The administrative techniques that enabled effective governance of diverse populations provided practical solutions to governmental challenges that remained relevant throughout Mexican history. The principles of cultural accommodation, local autonomy, and administrative flexibility that characterized imperial governance influenced colonial policies and post-independence constitutional developments. The urban planning concepts that created Tenochtitlan as a model city influenced approaches to urban developments throughout subsequent history, while providing examples of environmental adaptation and architectural innovation that remained relevant to contemporary challenges of sustainable development and urban design. Knowledge and cultural traditions provided models for preserving indigenous wisdom while adapting to changing circumstances that influenced Mexican approaches to education and cultural preservation throughout the colonial and post-colonial periods. The artistic traditions that synthesized cultural influences into distinctive imperial styles provided inspiration for Mexican cultural movements that sought to create national identity through integration of indigenous and European influences, while maintaining connections to pre-Columbian heritage. The technological innovations enhanced agricultural productivity and craft production, provided foundations for colonial economic development, while demonstrating the practical benefits of cross-cultural exchange and technological diffusion that remained relevant to contemporary development challenges. The diplomatic tradition that created peaceful relationships with independent neighbors while managing conflicts within imperial territories provided examples of international relations and conflict resolution that influenced Mexican approaches to foreign policy and internal administration throughout subsequent history. From the desperate alliance of three rebel leaders to the sophisticated imperial system that dominated Mesoamerica for nearly a century, the Triple Alliance demonstrated that effective political organization could overcome resource limitations and geographical constraints, while creating prosperity and security for millions of people across vast territories. The administrative innovations, military achievement, and cultural developments that characterized this remarkable confederation continue to provide inspiration and practical guidance for contemporary efforts to create political institutions capable of governing diverse populations while preserving cultural autonomy and promoting economic development. The vision of unity through diversity that enabled three different city-states to create an empire that surpassed all previous Mesoamerican achievements remains relevant to contemporary challenges of political integration, cultural preservation, and economic developments that require cooperation across ethnic, linguistic, and regional boundaries, while respecting local autonomy and cultural identity. In understanding how the Triple Alliance succeeded in creating effective governance despite seemingly insurmountable obstacles, modern political leaders can find guidance for addressing challenges that demand innovative solutions and cooperative action across traditional boundaries and cultural difference. The eagle that soared above Tenochtitlan carried not just the dreams of Mexico warriors, but the accumulated wisdom of multiple civilizations, united in common cause, demonstrating that true imperial greatness emerges not from conquest and domination, but from synthesis and cooperation that creates prosperity and security for all participants in political communities, organized according to principles of mutual respect, shared responsibility, and collective